Hello, dear students. In this video today, we shall be discussing part 2 of novel Twilight in Delhi by Professor Ahmed Ali. This part 2 again begins with chapter 1, as there were the chapters 13 chapters in part 1, and this part 2 also has the similar kind of chapters. And again, therefore, the first chapter of part 2 is there. The part 2 begins with a line of poetry, if you would like to see it. For example, the line says, is it a storm or is it a life? We die of living and the strife. So, this is from the poetry of Khwaja Mir Dard, and the writer begins to start it by giving it a kind of feeling that difficult life is there, the problematic situation is occurring because of the British colonization and the weather conditions, and perhaps because of certain romantic conditions of Delhi of that time. This thing is happening, and that's what the novel is starting with. And I think everybody understand the translation like is jeene ke haathon to hum mar chale, etc. So that is the chapter part 2 beginning, but the chapter has different feelings like that. It begins here, chapter 2, and no poetry has been added in the beginning. I must say that this chapter is very significant with respect to not only the things which are happening already in part 1 and that will be connected with part 2, but some new things will also be added to that. And here lies the political element, that is the colonial element, that is the show of the presence of the British people in India. They were not shown in that in the part 1, and part 2 will be showing that. So let us go into the novel. To keep it brief, I shall be ignoring the part of text which are not important, and I shall be discussing only those parts of the text and passages which are really important for us. For example, the chapter begins with the similar description of the heat that we did have in the first chapter also. You know, everybody was able to understand the kind of heat there. The similar heat has been repeated here in this chapter, that goes to indicate the kind of connection between part 1 and part 2, that Delhi was very hot, and uh, the streets and the other parts of the mohallas and the houses, they were all just hot, very much hot because of the heat of summer. The same thing has been repeated in the beginning of this chapter, so that's not that significant. However, in order to construct the space and the timing or the things which were happening at that time, one can make the students read this passage. However, it's not that necessary, so that's why I'm ignoring it and coming to the 90 page, which is second page actually of that of the chapter 1 of part 2. Here is something very interesting. Let me read it for you. Outside the city, beyond the fort and beyond the Mori gate, workmen were digging away in the scorching heat of May, leveling or raising the earth, beautifying the ground in preparation for the coronation of a new and foreign king. But that was still far off, and no one seemed to be concerned. So this passage goes to mention that coronation darbar is going to be held of the king, which is not the king, local king, as in case of the Mughal kings, for example, when they were coming for the first day, they were weighed in the gold, and gold was distributed among the people. But here it's not the case. It's a foreign king which is coming. It's not a local king at all. It's coming. Definitely, it's a British king whose coronation will be held, and for that preparations are being made. The earth is being leveled somewhere. Somewhere it's being raised. Somewhere it is being beautified. In that way, the preparation is going on in order to welcome the king, British king, in order to perform the ceremony of his coronation. So that is the passage actually, which is really very significant, which goes to talk about the presence of the British people, their government, their activity. And the writer definitely uses the word foreign king, and as a result, we are able to understand that this king is not from the local people. It's not indigenous at all. It is from the foreign land. So that is why colonial element is being highlighted here. The presence of the British is being shown. So in that way, this novel does have the kind of inclusion of the post-colonial element and colonial element in it. So that is why it is now the political element which has entered into it. It will be elaborated further in the next coming chapters, but in this very chapter, again, some of the things will be repeated in order to make it a romantic novel as well, in order to reflect the people of the life of the people of Delhi of that time, what were they doing and how they were doing. But first of all, some light will be thrown again on Mir Nihal's character as it was thrown in the first chapter of the first part. Same thing is going to happen here. For example, let me take you to the next passage. Here, for example, we have some lines here that Mir Nihal is traveling and walking on foot, and is going here and there, and he was witnessing certain scenes. For example, another indication of the post-colonial element is about the tram cars, which is mentioned here in these lines. The presence of these tram cars, noisy tram cars, is being indicated to show that the British were there, and their machinery, their inventions were also present there. Some of the spaces have also been mentioned, like Chandni Chowk is there. It goes to reflect the kind of spaces about which we are having this discussion. Then the clock tower is there. This clock tower also is the British indication, and again, Khadi Boli, some of the places, and the Bali Mara, these are some of the places mentioned there. And Mir Nihal further continues to travel, and the mention of Baban Jan is also made here. As soon as he remembers Baban Jan, he thinks about the heat there. He feels some kind of pressure on his nerves, and he feels that he's being attacked by some disease, and perhaps it's because of some rising temperature, or his worries about the people, about the things which are happening around him. He felt a lot of blood pressure in his veins, and as a result he felt that as if he's going to fall down, some kind of heat stroke he's going to feel. So that is why he went further and bought certain mangoes and other things from different shopkeepers, so that he can prepare some kind of curing, we can say juice, or the medicine he can prepare and then take it as well under to become normal. So that can be called Mir Nihal's choices for making him better. Some of the fruits have also been talked about in this chapter, that is about the pomegranates, for example, from Kandahar they have come. Different shopkeepers are asking him to take it and then use them also in order to become good. Same is the case with another repetition here in this chapter, that in the first chapter also we could listen about azan being performed, and same is the case with Nisar Ahmed again being mentioned here, that he says the prayer. In many chapters, this Nisar is being mentioned, his azan saying is being mentioned, and his importance for the Muslim society, that is being mentioned, and his comparison is being made with Hazrat Bilal, the Negro companion of Muhammad, peace be upon him, who used to say the azan, and again it's being said here. So Nisar is being given the similar kind of quality. Some of the light has been thrown on his character also. It's not that important to talk and discuss here. It's simply a character, a sporting character, in order to show the culture of the Muslim people of Delhi of that time. Similarly, kites are being repeated here, that kites are there, the pigeons are there. These things have been abundantly talked about in the last section. And there's no need now to talk about these things, that the pigeon flying was there and kite flying was there. We have plenty of this. We have established actually that these things were the culture, were the kind of indication of Muslim behavior and culture of the street people at that time. So these things keep on. Some of the more characters, for example, Sheikh Muhammad Sadiq is mentioned here. Some of the friends of Mir Nihal are talked about. We shall be reverting once again to the issues of marriages, for example, as the first part was replete with the issues of marriages. For example, the marriage of Begum Wahid, the marriage of Bilqis with Asghar, and then again it was the marriage of younger sister Mehru that was being arranged there. Here again, another marriage, but this time it's the marriage of the servants to be held there. For example, one friend of Mir Nihal, who is Sheikh, as the name mentioned in the last page is there, he also wants that one of his nieces, which possibly got orphaned because of the death of her parents, she is now young and she needs to be married to someone. And Ghafoor is the servant of Mir Nihal, who is being thought here to be an eligible bachelor. That's why the proposal is offered to Mir Nihal. And Mir Nihal is not that much ready to get this person married to that girl. So he says to Sheikh Saab that he will be thinking, he'll be asking Ghafoor if Ghafoor gets prepared for this, possibly the marriage may take place. So it means that some kind of marriage proposal is again being discussed here in this chapter also. The marriage proposal regarding Ghafoor, the marriage proposal regarding the kind of orphaned girl. So one can say again and again that as the marriages were the norm in case of Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice, where many of the proposals were there, some were being accepted, some were being rejected. Similar is the case here in this novel, that proposals are being made, proposals are being accepted, and marriages are taking place. So in this regard, this novel goes very close to that novel as well. But one thing is quite significant, because in that novel, very little description of the marriages of the servants is being talked about, and that is here. In this case, if we refer to Shakespeare, for example, in Merchant of Venice, there, before the hero and heroine can marry, the servants are ready to marry each other, and that's why this thing can be reflected in this case as well. Literature possibly keeps on reminding us some good spaces of life, good places of life, and good ways of life. That is why even in this heat, even this colonial situation, even in this loss of power of the people like Mir Nihal, these people are going to have some enjoyment, some pleasure by celebrating love matters or by marriage matters. That is why perhaps the writer has included that. Another significant aspect of the novel can be there, and that is about the mention of, again, religious culture. That in this chapter also, in the last chapter also, we read about certain woman who was naked and roaming about in the streets, and some of the fakirs and some of the beggars as well. Here also a fakir is being mentioned here. That is the must kalandar, or the mad fakir, is naked, his dusty body is there, and he is talking and foul also. Sometimes he's not talking at all, but he's filthy, his hands are filthy. But these people are mostly thought to be the dervishes or Sufis of that time, or perhaps we have this vision about such people. So that thing is also mentioned in the end of this chapter, but that's not significant at all, because these fakirs, these people, type people, are found in every society, almost in Hindu society, in Muslim society, even in Europe. One can see these such type of people hanging on there. So that's not important at all. The important thing with which the chapter should be left is the presence of British being shown, and then the worry of Mir Nihal about Baban Jan, as for example, the end of the chapter also is taking place in the same sense. For example, the last paragraph says, Mir Nihal was worried, feeling heavy in the head, anxious about the birds. The thought of Baban Jan came back to his mind again, and with it, Rubai of Sarmat, the mystic fakir and Persian poet who was beheaded by Aurangzeb, that also came in his mind. That's the kind of beauty of literature that we can also experience in this chapter. So that's the end of the whole chapter. The discussions that we have made is to make the chapter easier for the student to understand. So if you like it, you understand it something, do not fail to hit the subscribe button as well as the like button. Hope to see you next time in some other video. Till that time, keep happy, keep peaceful, and keep smiling as well. So thank you for watching.